Welcome back to Westerospective, where we bring you Game of Thrones, the old seasons, and the new. I'm Geoff.
I'm Ron.
And if this is your first time checking us out, what we do is we are going back to the very, very beginning of Game of Thrones in the off point of the season where we don't have any new episodes to talk about, but as soon as the new season hits back, we will be jumping back on that. This week's episode is Season 1, Episode 2, The Kingsroad. And the way we're doing this is, as the title kind of hints at, we're looking at these old episodes with the perspective of being totally up to date. So please do not watch these if you care about spoilers, because we are talking about these and spoiling pretty much everything that has happened in Game of Thrones, because we have been watching these to pick up on all the little bits of foreshadowing and everything. So
yes,
yeah, you have been warned. Spoilers for all of Game of Thrones. So this is episode 2. This episode, I love how you start to see the actors really start getting into the groove of like figuring out how they want to portray it. Probably a little bit with the writing teams too, like really getting down how these characters work with these actors, and it's just really fun to watch, I thought.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting watching some of them still trying to find the character, you know. One thing I've always been curious about with this show in general is what it's like for the actors, because the way the books are written, they're kind of from the unique perspective of a character at a time, all the events. So I just wonder how much easier or harder that makes it for the actor. Because on one hand, they can get right into the mindset, but on the other hand, they're kind of their own person, and it's like, how much do they want to mimic the person in the book? How much can they? I've always wondered what that's like for the actors, trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I've always kind of thought, like, is it harder trying to come up with your own character that's kind of fresh for your own developing, or is it harder to be an adapted character?
Yeah.
Where you have to kind of portray that character, but also be yourself at the same time. Like, acting is one of those things that's always been really fascinating to me. That's why I will go and watch a movie, even if I don't really care about the plot line, if it has certain actors I like. I really, really like certain actors, and we'll watch, even, like, Gary Oldman has done just god-awful movies, but it doesn't matter because I'll still enjoy it.
He's always fantastic in them.
Yeah, he's just he brings the exact same level of performance no matter what he's doing. He'd be doing like a fucking M&M's commercial, and he'll be like acting his ass off.
Dude, you want to know his range? You go from Batman Begins to Book of Eli, man. Like,
yeah,
it's crazy.
Fifth Element.
But yeah, Tyrion in this, just fucking fantastic, dude.
Yeah, this was the first episode. Dinklage was good. This was straight up the beginning of Tyrion in the show. I thought. Like,
I thought so too.
He is just gold. We usually go kind of point by point throughout the episode and kind of touch on it chronologically. Speaking of the actors, we talked about him a little bit last time, but Ian Glenn, who is Jorah, hit the ground running, I thought.
I thought so too, yeah.
His mannerisms in these first 2 episodes are very consistent to what he's still doing with the character now. And I just thought he was fantastic from the get-go.
To be fair, he had like 2 lines in the first one, so, you know.
In this second episode, he gets a little bit more to do with Khaleesi, and I thought his performance really kind of...
Ian Glenn is someone that needs to show up in the DC universe or the MCU, because if you've ever watched what's the name, Strike Back on Starz, he was pretty awesome in that too. I
still need to watch that. That's kind of like
he was a villain.
It's one of those shows that everyone that has seen it is obsessed with it, kind of. Like, I really need to go back.
To be fair,
so he was on the American version, or was he on the English version?
He was on the American version.
Okay.
To be fair, I only saw the first season, but the episodes that I saw him in, he was pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. From there, they showed one of the true quintessential Tyrion moments of where he's waking up around all the dogs.
Yeah.
Fucking hysterical. See, they gave a fucking good line to Joffrey too. I think the first line Joffrey ever says on the show is "better looking bitches than you're used to, Uncle." Like, that one cracked me up pretty good. I was like, God damn it, Joffrey, I fucking hate you. But that was a good
was a good one.
We will give you that one. Yeah, but specifically with Dinklage, I think what shows like Tyrion's performance specifically, like him starting to come into form, is his delivery. Is you start to see the delivery that wasn't present in episode 1 all the way, but there's a lot of real Tyrion going on in this one.
It's pretty consistent with the current episodes, but the biggest difference that is kind of fun to see is this is a worry-free Tyrion at the moment. You know, he hasn't had any of the shit happen at King's Landing. He hasn't been King of the Hand. He's not King of the Hand. Hand of the King. He's not Hand of the Queen. He hasn't been to Marine. So he's pretty carefree and just kind of enjoying being a Lannister, basically.
Yeah, he hasn't had the traumatic events that shape, his character.
No scar, no shade, or whatever the fuck her name was.
Shay. Yeah.
Shay. Yeah.
This was one of the quotes I wrote down. I really, really liked his exchange where he's slapping Joffrey like 4 or 5 times.
That was my first note of the episode.
One of the all-time best scenes in Game of Thrones is Tyrion slapping Joffrey that many times. And I love when Joffrey is walking away and then the Hound's talking to Tyrion. He's like, the prince will remember that, little lord. I hope so. If he forgets, be a good dog and remind him.
Yes, I love that too. That's quintessential Tyrion. That's where he found the character, I think, right there.
Is just absolute gold. And you want to talk about a running theme for Westerospective is going to be the foreshadowing. I wanted to talk about his conversation with Jaime when he's at breakfast, because they have a couple of lines that get exchanged. This is Jaime talking to Tyrion, and he says, "My dear brother, there are times you make me wonder whose side you're on." And then he retorts, "My dear brother, you wound me. You know how much I love my family."
Yeah.
And then when you think back to that, after like all of the shit that goes down with Tyrion, and like just with Cersei wanting him dead, he straight up kills their dad. Like, I don't know how far in advance Martin knew what he was going to do, but there's just some like diabolical level foreshadowing going on with that.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that line that way, but yeah, that's exactly what's happening there. The more great Tyrion delivery is just how much of a pompous, lovable asshole he is at their breakfast. Like, yes,
it's just absolute gold. Did you have anything else to add with some of the Tyrion stuff at the beginning of the episode?
No, not at this juncture.
Okay. From there, they have a cool interaction between Jon and Jaime. And first of all, isn't it weird seeing Jon without Longclaw?
Yes.
Like, he is so synonymous with that sword in my brain that I forget he goes a good portion of the show without ever getting that sword yet. Because I would imagine that's probably like season 2, season 3 maybe.
I was thinking 3, but I can't remember. We'll get there.
So he obviously has to get it before Jorah's dad dies.
Yes.
And I think his dad died in season 3. So I'm gonna guesstimate he probably gets it towards the tail end of season 2, but I could be wrong. We'll have to wait. Oh, I can't wait to see Burn Gorman back too.
I know, dude. Burn Gorman was amazing.
All of the plot lines of Burn Gorman were fucking awesome. I'm really excited for that. I really, really like. We were talking about kind of like the star of the first episode being Jaime. Jaime's sarcasm while he's talking about the Night's Watch to Jon. He is such an asshole to Jon.
Oh, I know.
And what's funny is he's absolutely dead on everything he says.
Pretty much.
Because if Jon just took a moment to like really understand what he's getting himself into, he could have saved himself so much trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was pretty hilarious, and he was right on the nose, like you said, about everything. Yeah,
one of my other favorite moments of this episode is the scene between Arya and Jon, where he gives her needle.
I had honestly forgotten that they were that close because it's been so long that we've seen them on screen together. Because isn't this about the last time we ever see them on screen together?
That might be the only extended interaction they get, period.
Yeah.
Because they're in scenes together in the first episode, but like they have this exchange, and then by the end of the episode, Jon's gone.
Yeah.
So that might be the only real scene they share. And that was actually one of my notes. Is I along with you had forgotten how close they were, and I think it actually makes a whole lot of sense when you're looking back with like the perspective of having watched all of these seasons, because it makes sense for them to be so close, because it makes sense because they are both, you know, quote unquote Starks with something to prove. You know, Jon is a bastard trying to prove himself. Arya is a girl trying to prove herself amongst the boys.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say they're both kind of out of place, and that gives them common ground. So, but yeah, I was kind of surprised, but I love all their interactions with Needle.
I'm really looking forward to, that's one of the all-time most famous quotes is first lesson, sticking with the pointy end.
Yes. So she said.
You just couldn't help yourself. I'm actually really looking forward to them getting to interact now in the upcoming season, presumably, because
it has to happen at some point, right? Because she's back.
Yeah, she's back, and like yourself, I had completely forgotten that it was. I should have remembered that it was Jon that gave her Needle, but I'd even forgotten that. It's been so long.
I remembered that much, but I forgot about that entire scene revolving around it.
Yeah, it's very, very touching. Just how close, Jon. Like, what's kind of funny is, all of these first few episodes, all of the interaction between the kids is always Jon. It's not Rob.
Yeah.
Like, Jon seemed to be the one that was genuinely, like, so close to all the younger siblings. So it's really heartbreaking to see, like, what happens to some of them.
Although there was something I thought about the first time I saw Needle, when he was talking to Jaime Lannister, and I remembered he was having Needle forged. I was thinking about it to myself, because my wife has only seen 2 episodes of Game of Thrones now, but she, I was thinking one of my favorite characters we're going to get back to now is her dancing instructor. I forgot all about her dancing instructor.
Oh, I love him.
Oh, he's amazing. He was one of my favorite stuff coming up with that, and we'll obviously get more on him later, but I cannot wait to get back there.
One of the really eerie quotes in the episode too is when Robb is talking to Jon as he's just about to leave. Jon has the quote of "You Starks are hard to kill." It's like, oh, if only you knew, Jon Snow. You really know nothing.
Yeah.
Because by the time you fucking come back, 3/4 of them are fucking dead.
You know what just now occurred to me as we're talking? So lesson 1, sticking with the pointy end. That's all she's been doing in the last couple seasons is sticking people with the pointy end of things.
Yeah, like the last 3 seasons, honestly, because like she started killing people even when she was with the Hound. Like,
yeah,
that whole diner sequence that I'm really excited to get back to. Let's see.
Was that the gurgling sound effects as she slowly slits the guy's throat, or like goes through the guy's throat?
Well, thank you for reminding me of that. I didn't want to sleep tonight anyway, so that's appreciated. So let's talk. One of the most important scenes of the show, in retrospect, is Ned's last conversation with Jon.
Yes.
So
I'd always remembered this because I'm always like, who the fuck is your mom?
So now that we know, the writing is absolutely genius, because like one of the quotes that he says is, you may not have my name, but you have my blood. And it's so genius because you take it at first glance when you're just watching the show. It's like, oh, that makes sense. He's the dad.
Right.
No, he's not lying
uncle
to him. He's just not telling him the whole truth.
Yeah, he's the uncle. So
yeah, he's his uncle. It's
genius. Downright genius.
It's absolute genius. And they had to have known, if that wasn't a direct quote from the book written from Martin, if that was Benioff and Weiss, then at that point they had to have known his parents.
And if George R. R. Martin had written that, not knowing what he wanted to do yet, it still works. Like, it was amazing.
I bet he knew ahead of time with that one.
I guarantee
he made such a big fucking deal of that over so long that I think he had to know.
Yeah.
Like, if he knew the Hodor thing, I think he fucking knew that thing.
He had to have.
He had to have. And their scene, like, I mean, Sean Bean, like, maybe his best acting performance of the season is a look on his face when he's talking to Snow and he's about to send him off. Like, when he's telling him, like, you know, the next time we see each other, I'll tell you. Like, I promise.
Oh, by the way, was the moment he said that, Chris was like, "Oh, he definitely dies then."
How much does she know about the show just ostensibly?
Anything that she does know is worthless in her mind until she gets to points, you know, where it starts coming, the pieces start coming together for her. But for the most part, she's pretty much fresh on it. Is that you and I are really the only people that she knows of that watch the show.
That's good.
So,
I could. It's such a cultural phenomenon. It'd be so hard to avoid.
Yeah.
Like there's actually someone on Nerdist who is now doing. I don't know if it was a continuing article, but they did at least one article that was all I know about Game of Thrones, having never watched Game of Thrones, and it was a shit ton of information just from the internet that they knew. Yeah, it's crazy.
My buddy Bobby, he knows all about the Red Wedding. He knows all about Jon Snow. He knows everything, and he's never watched an episode either. So yeah,
he needs to get up to date on it before it ends.
Real quick though, one thing that I was wanting to touch on was the moment with Bran, the unconscious Bran, who sadly is acting just as hard in that scene as he does now, with him completely unconscious.
No kidding.
Yeah, but you know when Jon walks in the room, the look on Catelyn's face
would just about give you grayscale.
Yeah, it was just. I've forgotten. I knew she treated him bad. I had forgotten how horrible she was to Jon.
She didn't even want him to say goodbye to his brother.
Yeah, it was just awful. And the more that he went on, the more touching that he got in the scene, the more pissed she was.
Yeah, it was like just brutal, just how pissed off she was. And then, like, it's such a fucked up story. Like, knowing that, you know, Ned, you know, he walks in on it and
that's what brought me to this too. Was I love Ned's reaction, because he walks in on Catelyn being a complete bitch to Jon, and he knows the truth. That's the other thing too. He knows the truth that he's never cheated on Catelyn Stark, and that's just kind of a price that he has to live with. He knows that that's his nephew. Yeah, what's crazy
too, he is so dead set on, you know, keeping that secret that it probably wouldn't hurt anything to tell his wife, because he can probably trust his wife. But you have to think about it, like, he almost keeps the secret just to keep up appearances.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it sells it more if she hates him that much.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, that note I had written down was Snow v. Cat, Dawn of Bastages. Because it was just, I forgot just how downright mean she was.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. Let's see. Yeah, it was just absolutely mind blowing to me how they tell you pretty much the lineage right there. You don't know it until you know it later on. How about we talk about the scene? I thought, which was some pretty cool foreshadowing, when Robert and Ned are at like the little picnic type thing while they're chilling on the Kingsroad.
Yes.
How fucking Robert, he gets exactly what is going to happen. Like, yeah. Right. He just picks the wrong Targaryen.
Yeah. He basically lays out the entire show for you. More or less.
He really does. I was just like, holy shit. Like, he's a fucking good king, because he called that shit, like, perfectly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ned wasn't around to see it, but yeah.
No. Neither one of them would be.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I was taken aback by that as well. I had remembered them having a conversation, but I didn't remember them I didn't remember him calling out the entire show in a storyboard for you, laser pointer and all. Also, I liked when he was asking the name of John's mother, and he's like, "I don't think you ever told me." He's like, "Nor will I."
I know. Like at that point, Sean Bean doesn't even fucking know. Yeah, and his performance and like the look on his face, like you just get it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like it was just mind blowing going back to some of the shit.
You don't really your first viewing, especially, you don't really appreciate how genius the fucking show is.
Yeah, like in like you'd said a couple times. You had watched it a couple of times through. This is my third time watching it through, but the last two seasons, because when I rewatched the show, it was while season 4 was about to start. So I was, a good chunk of the way through the show. But these last couple of seasons, like, they really, really got you so much information across that shows just how brilliant it was from the very, very beginning.
Yeah, it's genius just because the first time through you're watching, you're like, oh, this is pretty good. But when you go back through and watch it, you're like, this is fucking genius.
Like, you really don't get a full appreciation for the show, I think, until you actually probably go through it a couple of times. Like, it's so dense that I think it's one of those things like how like certain books you'll pick up on stuff you didn't pick up on the first time, and because there's so much going on. Yeah. I think it's one of those those special pieces of fiction that it's like the more you put into it, the more you get out of it.
Yeah, dense is the perfect way to describe it because it is just layer upon layer of all kinds of shit. And then, the first time especially you're going through it, it takes a while to get the names, the locations. Some of them you and I still don't have, just to get a full grasp of everything. And, there's a lot of stuff going on with rankings and where some of the houses are ranked, some of the positions people have. They don't mean a whole lot to you the first time you watch it through either. By the time you get far enough into the show that you know what a lot of this stuff means, you've kind of forgotten what all that meant in the earlier seasons.
You didn't have the tools to properly apply your information.
You had no perspective on everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's been just insane going back.
I know, and we haven't even gotten to the good shit. Like, we're
2 episodes in and we're still blown away.
It's a good show, and this is going to be like my 3rd or 4th time watching through, and I'm genuinely excited to go back and see stuff again. Like,
yes.
This is brilliant. Let's talk about some of my favorite scenes from the episode, where when Benjen, Snow, and Tyrion are out on the road heading to the Night's Watch. I really, really like pretty much everything Tyrion and Snow say to each other.
Yes. I have a part of a quote written down. I don't have the whole quote.
Okay.
But when he says, the mind needs a book the way a sword needs a whetstone, fucking awesome.
Yeah, I wrote down that too.
You can apply that to your daily life.
Yeah, that was exactly my next note. Like, that quote is one of those kind of like Tyrion's quote from the very first episode. The one about wear yourself like an armor and stuff like that. It's one of those quotes where you can take it right outside of Game of Thrones and it's just a good quote.
Yeah,
it's one of those like I had said. And it could be on the cover of Forbes type of thing. Yeah,
and that quote follows some amazing dialogue where he's talking about how he has a duty to his house the same way Jon has a duty to his house because he was born a Lannister. If he hadn't been born a Lannister, he'd have been thrown out in the street to die somewhere and stuff like that. So, and then that amazing quote follows amazing dialogue.
Yeah, like pretty much everything Tyrion says in this episode could be written down as quotes to point out during our Westerospective. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, I think you could tell even before he even got going, Tyrion was George R.R. Martin's favorite character.
Yes.
Because, like, all of the best quotes from the very beginning were as he
usually an author puts themselves in their story somewhere. I feel like Tyrion may be George R.R. Martin.
That's another thing, too. It's like, I really, really have a lot of respect for George R.R. Martin to have all of this dense material come out of, like, one dude's mind.
Yeah.
Because, like, this show This show would have been impressive if it was not a book series and it was put together by like 10 different TV writers. But just the fact that it all came out of one dude's head, kind of like Tolkien, like one dude came up with all of this stuff. It's just ridiculous.
I'd be fascinated to know how long he sat on this idea before he ever even wrote anything down.
I bet it's one of those things where
it has to be years and years of development.
I bet because it wasn't one of his first novels that he wrote. I bet he was compiling stuff for Game of Thrones 20 years before it was the thing.
Yeah.
Always just in the back of his mind. And, once he got established and could get a book deal and he could be respected enough to, take his time and take 5-6 years to write a novel. Most novelists don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So he kind of had to establish himself first before he dove into it all. So I think it'd be really cool to ask him that like a Q&A. I bet someone actually has at some point.
I bet someone
has
been
too. Wanting to go back and watch that Q&A with Stephen King too. Because
Yeah.
George R.R. Martin and Stephen King are both brilliant, but on two opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Like George R.R. Martin is like a world-building genius, and Stephen King is just like a writing machine.
George R.R. Martin is basically our modern day Tolkien, more or less. And Stephen King can be summed up in one scene from Family Guy when he gets knocked through the air. And he's like, ooh, and starts scribbling down as he's flying through the air. When he hits the ground, he's like, oh, new book done.
Yeah,
Like,
he's just an absolute machine. I really need to go back and watch that Q&A. It sounded fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the scene I had forgotten about until it was happening, where the assassin is sent after Bran.
Yes, dude, I remembered this.
I had actually totally forgotten about this until it started happening.
Yeah, I remembered this, and I did not remember, though, all of the fucking foreshadowing in this scene. But no, I had a conversation with Chris about the dire wolves, and I was just like, I was like, yeah, just so you know, the dire wolves are very protective of the Stark children, because I knew that scene was coming up. I don't remember what brought that up in conversation, but I was like, yeah. I was like, just so you know, they are very protective of the Stark children. And then the next episode, I didn't know it was that close, or I wouldn't have said that, but that next episode was the fucking assassins. I have the note I have is Assassin's Deed foreshadowing. And, dude, he literally was behind her with the knife blade to her throat, just the way it happens at the Red Wedding, and her hand grabbing the blade and like blood running down her arm and stuff from holding the blade. It looked just like the scene, with the exception that she was struggling. It looked just like the Red Wedding.
Yeah, that really, really crazy too is they name dropped the assassin's blade was Valyrian.
Yes.
Like, that threw me for a loop because, that just shows you how big of a deal that assassination attempt was, because they don't throw that shit around lightly.
Yeah, that was Valyrian steel and dragon's bone. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy that they had that. Because when it started happening too, like, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this happened, but for whatever reason, I was thinking it happened more towards like halfway through the season, not second episode. Like,
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, they did not dick around with some of the plot lines. So when Catelyn figures out that Bran, didn't fall, and the assassination attempt and all this shit, when she starts figuring out the plans, and then she's outside in the Godswood thing, and she has her trusted circle, right?
Yeah.
And Theon's there, and he has that fucking line that, Rob's like, I'll go and do blah, 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 blah. And then Theon's like, if it comes to that, I'll stand behind you. I was like,
bullshit.
Theon, you prick. There's so much just shit with Theon where he's acting like he, genuinely cares about their family. You're just like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
It's because it's like, over time in the new seasons, you've kind of gotten to the point where you can kind of... You feel like you don't necessarily like Theon, but you empathize with Theon. And then this first couple of seasons, he is such a piece of shit that you just forget how much of a scumbag Theon is. Really, until you go all the way back. Did you have anything else to add with the Starks portion from right there?
No, just aside from being blown away by the foreshadowing in that scene alone.
Let's see. Now, this was a plot line I had forgotten about too. They transitioned over to Khaleesi, and they have the scene where basically the former prostitute is teaching her what she wants to know for the call, and then there are some really, really great foreshadowing lines between them too. I really, really liked is the one I wrote down. It's where her helper is, she's with her and she asks, are you a slave, Khaleesi? I was like, Jesus, that was a deep line for what is coming up later.
Yeah.
Amelia Clarke too. She is, even from the first episode to the second episode, she is starting to I don't know if you caught this, but she is starting to come together. Did you get a sense of that?
Yeah. She's starting to kind of figure out what she needs to do to kind of better her position. I don't think she has her sights set, as high as the Mother of Dragons yet, but she's definitely figuring out what to do to better her position.
And it's with the first episode, she is just almost like a walking zombie. She is so, just gone, that to see her, interacting with others the way she is in this episode, you start to kind of see her coming together.
It's been long enough now for her character that she sees an opportunity and she's going to fucking take it. More or less. It's just, man, there's some good Khaleesi shit coming up too. I'm excited for. Yes.
Let's see.
Jorah shit too.
Yeah. So do you want to start talking about the whole big happening of this episode, the ending with Arya, Sansa, and Joffrey? Or did you have any other notes you want to touch upon?
Arya v. Prince Dick? Yes. I had forgotten the level and depth of that scene. I remembered the scene, but I had just forgotten how big of a prick he was and how much of a bitch Sansa was, and just everything that went, full detail into it. The butcher's boy, I had almost completely forgotten about it. I remembered someone else was there, but
see, I always remembered it just because of how important it was for the Hound's character, because he's the one who ends up executing him.
Yeah, he should have ran faster. Yeah, but there's so much. There's a little bit of foreshadowing there too, just in Arya. And by the way, did you notice Arya's left-handed? I've never noticed that before.
I still didn't notice that.
She was sword fighting with her left hand with that stick. But just a aside. But yeah, Joffrey, when he's just sitting there slowly, cutting the butcher's boy's face and stuff, and then
that's the first time you see just how sadistic he is.
Yeah. I like the irony in that Arya took him down, and he's a Stark, or she's a Stark. Later, he's married to a Stark who is later accused of murdering him. I liked that.
Yeah.
But I also like the fact, the irony in the direwolf, the Stark house sigil mauling his arm, and the fact that he cuts the head off of the biggest direwolf there is in the North, Ned Stark. Yeah.
Let's see. I really like the foreshadowing too of Arya's character in the scene where she has the sword pointed at him.
Yes.
And she has that, Maisie Williams was already fantastic, because you see in her eyes how unhinged she could be.
Yes.
And it really goes to show a lot of Arya. She is so close to just murdering the fuck out of Joffrey regardless of the consequences. That's just who she is.
Yeah.
She's ferocious. She she worries about getting revenge now and worrying about consequences later. Like she's still like that to today. Okay, when they go back to the hut after they've been searching for Arya, Arya has I always see the names of the direwolves mixed up besides Ghost, but she sends away her direwolf. We're still waiting to see if they're ever going to bring the direwolf back.
Oh, I'm sure they will, and it'll be glorious.
I always say he's rowing with Gendry. Just yeah. So when they have all of that go down, like I really like the Robert line too, where he's like, "You let that little girl disarm you," and he just gives him that go to hell look.
Not only that, the best part of that line, not just what he says or how he says it, but as soon as he says it, everyone in the room starts murmuring to each other. I love that.
And while we're talking, like you were bringing up like the symbolism with Joffrey, getting his hand bitten by the wolf, like the symbolism when they are picking which of the wolves is going to die.
Yes,
the Lannisters try to send Ilyn Payne to execute the wolf, who is the executioner who beheads Ned in the second to last episode.
Yes,
like I was like, holy shit, that was clever. He's executing a wolf that was completely innocent and didn't do anything.
Yep.
Just
like Ned.
The shit they do with the dire wolves went right over my head.
Yeah.
Even on my second viewing of watching the show.
Yeah.
Like it's not until now when we're really diving into it where you pick up like
I'm ashamed of the shit that I missed going back through.
Right?
Because even the first couple times I've gone through this, Geoff, I've been through season 1. I know who executes you, and it still went over my head.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just the. I like the. I don't know the word to call it, but it's a little bit of dark justice, I guess. Sansa is put in a position to where, she wants more than anything to be the queen, basically. So she wants to marry Joffrey and be a princess and then be coronated queen and all that stuff. So she wants to please the Lannisters. She doesn't want to betray her family and disappoint her father either. So she just kind of shuts down and plays stupid. And that conversation and her doing that is basically what leads to Lady being killed. So that being naive and everything kind of cost her. Being naive throughout the show always costs her until recently when she starts becoming more like Cat and Littlefinger and starts taking stuff for her own. But the final thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if you have more or not, but the last note that I have is Ned, when he stops the executioner and says, "She's of the North. She deserves better than the butcher," and he's talking about a wolf. He's talking about a pet. I fucking love Ned Stark and just how honorable he is, and I just hate that that's what gets him killed.
Well, yeah, one of my notes too that ties in with that is this was a fucking hard episode to be a dog lover.
Yes.
Because when you and you see it on Sean Bean's face too when he goes out to execute the wolf, like just how much it destroys him to have to do that. Like you were saying, he's so honor bound, and when they don't show it, but it's enough to just make your heart sink. It's devastating.
That fucking sound, and just as an aside, the moment he does it. And you hear the direwolf sound, how did Wicket react? Because my dog Shepherd reacted pretty strongly to that.
I think Wicket was probably asleep, so if he wasn't, I missed it.
Shepherd whipped his head around, ears up, and kind of tilted his head and just kind of stared at the screen for a second. Yeah.
So if that was your last note, my last note after this was... So they transition right when the dire wolf gets killed, right, to Bran waking up.
Yes.
Was that foreshadowing for the warging?
Yeah, I couldn't decide if it was the warging or the three-eyed raven or what.
Yeah, like there was a lot of subtext to it that I didn't pick up on before. That I don't know. It's not one of those. I
always just thought it was, a clever transitioning, clever writing, clever screenplay, or whatever. I have never actually thought any deeper about it until now.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to me. It wasn't one of those where it was clear foreshadowing. Yeah. But just the fact that you could kind of take it that way was pretty interesting to me. Yeah. And it was one of my things. I was curious if you had caught that.
Yeah, no, I caught it, but I didn't know. I didn't think of it as the warging, which probably makes more sense. But I was like, that kind of makes sense. He would have felt a disturbance in the Force because he is exactly. The three-eyed raven.
We'll have to. I'm actually curious to see
what else they do with that.
Going back through the show again, knowing what we know now, the three-eyed raven, little bits and pieces they spread throughout the show ahead of time. Yeah, be curious to pick up on that. Was there anything else you wanted to touch up on with this week's episode, Ron?
Nope. That covers everything that I've got.
Star of episode 1, Jamie. Star of episode 2, Tyrion and Sean Bean, I think.
Yes.
Absolutely. So yeah, we appreciate you guys checking us out if you've gotten through the episode thus far. If you'd like to check us out more, we do not only our Tonight's Watch Game of Thrones episodes, but we also do some Let's Plays. Currently we're doing Dead Space all the way through. We also do a Week of Geek News podcast. It is our podcast we release usually every Wednesday or Thursday. In addition to that, we have Facebook and Twitter links in the description below. And if you know anyone else that might also enjoy our content, we would greatly appreciate the share. For this night and all the nights to come, I'm Geoff.
And I'm Ron, and now this watch has ended.